All right. Hey, everybody. So this is Josh Bruce, and today we're going to be talking about user expectation and how that plays a role into experience design. I figured this was a good topic to do because I just got the 16-inch MacBook Pro back from Apple support, and basically this is actually its second trip there and coming back to me. And basically, we'll talk more about that when we jump into it. With that said, when it comes to user expectation, there are kind of two or three major ways that expectation kind of gets influenced. And I'm a pretty firm believer that unmet expectation is sort of the breeding ground of disappointment and suffering. And so, sometimes it's marketing. That's what sets user expectation. We have this great new device. It's going to be really, really cheap. Not only that, but it's going to be able to make you coffee in the morning, change your oil, and paint your house all at the same time, straight out of the box. You're not going to need to do anything. And then, of course, you unwrap it and come to find out it's in 50 billion parts, and you're going to have to tinker with it and all this other good jazz to actually make it work, right? That's setting user expectation too high in comparison to the experience that they're actually going to have, right? On a positive note, you can, you can also go too far the other way where you undersell things. This is usually where I am, where basically I will undersell things to the point that people are like, what's the value in it for me? And when we talk about cost, price, value, we'll get into that more. The second one is when you didn't have anything to do with it. It's basically people's imagination sort of running away with them. So you talk to someone about a new type of device or a product, and basically they start going, oh yeah, I've been waiting for this my entire life, and I bet it's going to have this, and I bet it's going to have that. And then they get it. And that sort of unmet expectation is not really on you or the marketing department. It's really on them. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But basically, it's on them for hyping themselves up, right? So the hype machine can come from corporate, and it can also come from the consumer. The third one, this is the one that we're actually going to be focusing on. This is expectation built over past experience, and that's a very human thing for us to do. And I thought this was a good example because basically the issue that I'm having with the MacBook Pro 16-inch is that it doesn't, from a power perspective, it does not act like my 15-inch, and it also does not act like my work laptop. So with that said, I don't know really what's going to happen with this thing. I literally just got it back. And so, we're going to take a look and we're going to see how this goes. So let's jump into it. All right, so we have this back, and basically, long story short, the issue that I ran into twice now has to do with power. And the first time, arguably, could be me. I purchased some hubs and things like that for the studio refresh, and the 16-inch, I don't know, I ran into issues with the 15-inch as well, where basically plugging those in caused some type of power problem. So I switched those out and now have more name brand hubs and that sort of a thing. But with the 16-inch, I was still running into problems. And so I put it in, sent it in once, and got it back. And now it's back again after going through the second time. And basically what had happened, was I had the regular video setup going on, and I started getting these warnings about too much power consumption, and that basically USB devices had been turned off, right? And that I needed to disconnect the USB devices that were driving too much power or pulling too much power. And eventually it got to the point where actually the only quote unquote device I had plugged in was the power brick and the USB C cable. And even with that being the case, I got the notification that basically my USB devices were drawing too much power and that the USB ports had all been shut off. And I was kind of like, okay, so what you're telling me is that the thing that is supposed to be giving you power is drawing too much power. That doesn't make much sense. And I actually did have a video, or not a video, but a picture where I had the device, I had the MacBook plugged in, and when I went to power it on, I was given the battery notification that came up not too long ago. There it is. I sort of got this, low power, plug me in kind of battery, even though the device was actually plugged in. And with my 15-inch, I don't run into that problem whatsoever. As long as it's plugged in, no configuration or setup draws enough power away from the brick to not be able to charge the battery as well. And I'm not doing anything major when it comes to processing. So they've replaced the battery. They've also replaced the top shell. So basically we've got a brand new keyboard. So what we're going to do is I'm going to check and see how well this actually works. And one of the issues that I ran into was basically the support person sent a message to me saying, I can't duplicate this. And it doesn't, I can get a charge on the battery. And I said, the problem isn't that I can't get a charge on the battery. The problem is that from an experience perspective, I've had, a MacBook Pro now for the last decade, and I've never had a situation wherein the battery was dead. I've plugged it in and I could not immediately power it on, right? So with my phone, for example, sometimes, the battery will die and I go to plug it in and it takes it like, 4 or 5 minutes to gain enough of a charge for me to actually do something. And that's what was happening with my laptop, and that's never happened with my laptop. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. I'm going to plug it in, and then I'm going to try to power it on, and we're going to see what happens. Okay, so it's plugged into the power adapter, and now we've plugged in the laptop. So that took roughly 20 seconds. Let's go ahead and try to power it on. That's not a good sign. It also didn't make the battery noise, which makes me a little concerned. Yep, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I don't feel like this should be the experience. The experience I should have when I plug the power cable in is that it should power on, no matter what state we're in. And that to me it's a serious problem, if for no other reason that it's not what I'm used to as a user. And so if the experience has to change, that's fine, but notify users of that change, right? If the expectation now is that if you let the battery die, that you need to let it charge for 2 or 3 minutes, okay, fine, right? But let your users know that. And I'm going to try, now that this is the case that we're getting, because I was hoping it would just be fixed. But since this is the case that we're getting, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and set up, put the 15-inch MacBook Pro into the same situation, like the same circumstance, and see what happens then. Until that point, I'm just going to kind of let this timer go and let it charge up. You'll probably see my arm every once in a while check to see if it's powered up enough for us to actually turn it on. And I will also say that to try to be fair, what I'll do is, because it came back from Apple with a dead battery, so what I'll probably do is go ahead and let the battery die once again with the 16-inch, plug it back in and see what happens. So yeah. And just in case you're asking yourself the question of whether or not this is the power brick for the MacBook Pro 16-inch, right, the 96-watt power brick, it is. So this is supposed to be working just as it should. And when I gave the laptop over to Apple, we did try it in the store with one of the support folks using their power brick, and it did the same exact thing. So Okay, so basically we've got 5 minutes, give or take, and it looks like the battery symbol was trying to come back as well. So yeah, 5 minutes, give or take. Let's go ahead and do a lap. Give or take 20 minutes or 20 seconds, sorry. So, 5 minutes of charging to basically get to the point where I can actually turn it on and the computer feels like it can actually do something. So go ahead and pick English. They did mention that I was going to be asked to sort of, sorry, I want to keep this timer running. I'm not going to stop it, but I'm going to keep the screen on. So I was told when I got it that basically I was going to need to go ahead and...
macOS contains a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. If you know how to use
thank
VoiceOver,
you.
press the Command key while you press Touch ID 3 times at the right end of the touch bar.
Patience. So I'm going to take this off of low power mode, and go ahead and plug it in. That way I should be able to turn auto lock off and go back into our timer still running. Okay, stopwatch, there we go. So welcome, let's go ahead and do... Okay, so a software update is required, right? So we need to get updated to macOS Catalina. So I'm going to let that happen. And while that's happening, I'm going to adjust the lights and the focus because it seems pretty bad. Okay. So now we're on the data privacy screen. And sorry, trying to drain the laptop battery on the work laptop. So data privacy, okay, whatever. Don't transfer any information. That's what they told us to do. So that's what I'm going to do. And basically, I'm going to go ahead and sign up with my Apple ID and iCloud because that's typically how I transfer data. So through the magic of television, I will say I do appreciate the sort of evolution of two-factor authentication that's been going on, which is great. I do agree to the terms and conditions. So let's go ahead and set up our machine again through the magic of television. Okay, so we're setting up iCloud. Sorry, whenever I have to wait, I feel like I have to play with things. So okay, so we're setting up Find My, which is fine. I usually want to do a customized setup just to make sure. So we're going to enable location services, share Mac Analytics with Apple, go ahead and share it with the developers as well. I do that mainly because I too am a developer and I appreciate when I get that type of feedback as well. Sure, screen time, measure how much I actually use the device, which is fine. And Siri. I'm not going to enable Ask Siri right now because there's still sort of this. So the idea with Ask Siri when you have multiple devices is that it will use volume and triangulation to figure out which device you're closest to, and that's the one that Siri will actually use. It's not really working out so well for me. Like I'll try to activate Siri expecting it to be from my AirPod, and next thing I know, my laptop in the other room is like, okay, I'm on it. And it's just like, no, you shouldn't be. So just going to leave that disabled for now. Store files and documents and desktop in iCloud Drive. Yes. Store photos and videos in iCloud Photos. Yes. That's pretty much my standard issue setup. So, why not? Let's go ahead and do File Vault, leave that as encrypted. Let's go ahead and set up Touch ID because I do use biometrics pretty heavily for both my phone as well as the device. I will say that I don't necessarily appreciate Touch ID, or rather I appreciate Touch ID more than raise to wake, as well as auto unlock through Face ID, because I don't want to have immediate access to my computer just because I sat down and looked at it. Same thing with my phone. I would much rather be more deliberate in that interaction. So I'm going to put dark mode onto auto. Yeah, sure, True Tone, why not? So it's finishing setting up the account on the Mac, and I'll hit another lap when we get done with that. And then I need to at least set this up to be able to take video, so that basically we can do the same thing with the work laptop as well as the 15-inch MacBook Pro. So new accounts added. I'm just going to say continue and let iCloud kind of do its own thing. So updates are ready to install. Okay, let's go ahead and install the updates. I figured all of that would have been done. Let's go ahead and leave automatic updates turned on. Wi-Fi calling. Let's go ahead and turn that on. And we'll just let the notifications keep coming in. Now, whoa, nobody needs to see that. Okay. Let's go ahead and quit out of FaceTime. All right. And, let's go ahead and just so that we have a standard issue baseline, I'm going to leave it this way. I'm not going to mess with the dock. I'm not going to do anything because I don't want there to be compounding variables of, well, what could be causing this issue if it's classified as an issue. So for right now, just going to leave the laptop plugged in. My power is charging faster than it's draining. And I'm just going to kind of let it do its thing with iCloud. I will say I don't want to make the presumption, but yeah, here it is. So basically, when you first set it up, you have access to desktop and documents in the cloud, but it's not actually making API calls to iCloud to get an idea of what's in there already. So from a user experience perspective, this is kind of weird that, if I have my 15-inch MacBook Pro and I have my phone and I have, say my iPod Touch, then when I go into files, I see all these different applications, like for instance, Affinity Designer and things like that. I don't see them here. Even if they're grayed out and something is indicating, hey, we're waiting, we're downloading this data and that sort of a thing, right? Same thing with the desktop folder, same thing with the documents folder. Like, hey, here's a list of the files that are in there, but we can't do anything with them yet. Like, it's just disabled or grayed out. I think that would be a much better experience, at least from my perspective. So actually, what should we do here? Let's go ahead and I'm going to unplug it and I'm going to let the battery drain. Again, no, I'm trying to think, I'll figure it out in the short run, but basically we do have it up. It is running, it is charging, and I can go ahead and log out. And when I do, I see my avatar image up there, which is a good thing, and then needing to use my password to initialize Touch ID. So basically, roughly 30 minutes or less, and you're up and running, and that includes updating from, I think it was High Sierra before Catalina, and then to Catalina. So, we're good there. It's a pretty standard issue deal. So anyway, let's go ahead and stop the stopwatch and prepare for the comparison of the 15-inch. So Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and capture that. I went ahead and started the timer again, and I'm going to make it a new lap just to try to be as fair as possible. So I use OBS as my recording software, so I don't have enough devices nor a standalone camera to be able to do the recording of the two different laptops with the same setup. So let's go ahead and look for OBS. And I will say, as iCloud continues to catch up to us, this is one of the drawbacks to the onboarding experience, at least for someone like myself that's been on a Mac and in the Mac ecosystem for a very long time, right? Like I used to pay for MobileMe and that sort of a thing. So, so before it was iCloud, basically I was already here, and yeah, it's weird that I have to like, as notifications come in, like basically I kind of have to sit here, and I do have to babysit it a little bit, but you know, kind of is what it is. And while that's doing that, it looks like System Preferences has another notification for us. Software update. Let's go ahead and update now. And yeah, we're going to apply those settings, whatever they are. So this update requires us to restart the Mac. Let's go ahead and restart it. So it says 43 minutes remaining on the screen. So we're just going to keep this going and see what happens. So much for that 30-minute concept, but we'll see how this goes. All right, looks like we're back. Let's do check automatically for updates. And that, I think, is going to be kind of it. I am going to need to also install the Logitech gaming software. Choose operating system. Okay, so they do have a Catalina release, which is good, because Catalina is to 10.15, I believe. So yeah, 10.15, that's our version. 16-inch, that's good. 2.6 gigahertz processor, 32 gigs of RAM, which is correct. We have both the AMD Radeon Pro with 8 gigs, and then we have the Intel onboard graphics on the chip itself, which is also good. So let's go ahead and download the gaming software. You know, chances are I'm going to show this video or send this video into Apple as well to kind of say, this is the experience I'm having. Is this the experience I should be having? Because that was one of the things that I told the folks at the Genius Bar as well, was basically like, if this is my new normal, right? If this is supposed to be the experience I'm supposed to be having, despite the fact it hasn't been that way for the last 3 or 4 MacBook Pros that I've had, you know, fine, okay, cool. Let me know and I'll get over it, basically, with the understanding that if I do end up using the battery to the point that it drains beyond being able to use it, right? Like, because it's holding memory in stasis kind of a thing. And I plug it in, and I basically still have to wait like 5 minutes for it to charge to the point that I can actually use the laptop. Okay, not the greatest experience ever, but you know, maybe I'll get used to it. Oh, I should have run a different lap. So basically, you know, it looks like just under an hour to be able to do a fresh start with an install plus an upgrade. And let's go ahead and double check with Finder to see where we are with iCloud Drive. So iCloud Drive is still only showing the desktop and the documents folder. It's not showing things like Affinity Designer, Preview, Pages, Keynote, all of that. It's still just showing desktop and documents, so it's still trying to catch up with itself. And it's my historical representative, it's my history being an indicator of the potential future. This whole process of iCloud catching up with itself is going to take 24 to 48 hours, if not 72. And again, that experience is the one that is probably the most jarring. And sure, we'll do the feedback to Logitech as well. And it's wanting to restart the computer. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, it looks like we're restarted. And I'm not going to worry about starting it. So that gives us basically 1 hour for all of this stuff. And looks like we've got another email account that just came in. So we're going to do mail only for this one. And that looks fine to me. So it's not asking me to do anything with regard to account maintenance or setup. So we're just going to let that be. All right, so that's the MacBook Pro 16-inch. As you saw, the battery was completely dead when I got it. I plugged it in. This was first time out of the gate from getting it back from the Genius Bar. And when I plugged it in, basically I had to wait roughly 5 minutes to go ahead and actually get to use it. So now we're going to let the work laptop finish draining, and we're also going to let the the MacBook Pro 15-inch drain as well, and we'll continue on about our merry way. Okay, so we're back, and I've drained the work laptop. So this is an HP Probook. It has 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it is running the latest install of Windows 10. It is a modified version, given that I do work at Microsoft right now on a contract for doing Scrum Mastery and Agile coaching, just to verify that the power is in fact dead. I'm not going to go into too much depth of my issues with this laptop. One of the big ones is that unlike the MacBook Pro, it doesn't auto on when you open it, right? So one of the things I do appreciate about a lot of the Apple products is that when you open up the lid, or with the iPad, you demagnetize the clasp. Basically, you're ready to go from the perspective of actually entering your ID or your information. Now, from the MacBook Pro 16-inch, basically what we did is it took me about 20 seconds to plug in the laptop. That's probably not going to happen. And then it took 5 minutes for the battery to be charged enough for me to actually power on the device. So let's go ahead and confirm that I cannot power on the device. This is the power switch here. I can hit all the buttons on the planet and nothing changes from the fact that I cannot turn the laptop on. I will also say that the HP does not seem to reserve enough power to even let me know on screen what I need to do with regard to battery being dead. All right, so let's go ahead and start a timer, or start the stopwatch. So I'm going to say reset to 0, and here we go. So grab our handy dandy power cord. All right, so just pretty much a standard issue power cord. I did not check the brick to see what the wattage was or anything like that. I might do that at a later time and put it into the description. I've plugged it in, and now we're going to hit the power button. Notice that the laptop is powering up. It did not take any extra time beyond the 20 seconds that it took for me to plug the laptop in. And as soon as I hit the power button, we're ready to go. I mean, it's going to take a while because this is an older laptop and I don't know what kind of a processor it's running or anything like that. And again, the battery is, dead. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug it, and we're going to see how long it takes for it to turn itself off. I will go ahead and sign in. Fair warning, when the battery died, it was basically, I was watching movies to try to run the battery down as quickly as I could. So through the magic of television. So I went ahead and I muted the laptop, but you can see this window here is basically telling me that the battery is running low, and that basically now it's powering down. So we can see that it had less charge in it to run the laptop even 5 minutes, the time that it took for me to get the MacBook Pro 16-inch charged up enough to power on, right? So now let's do the experiment again, because it could have been a fluke. So in less time than it's taken for that initial MacBook Pro 16-inch priming, right, just to get the battery to the point of powering the laptop on, we have been able to take this HP Probook from dead battery to powered on to signed in to battery dead to powered back on, right, in less than that amount of time. And given the time remaining, or the time showing up right now, which is about 3 minutes and 30 seconds, we could probably actually do it again, right? So if I were to unplug the power and do this all over again, we could probably run the experiment a third time. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hit the space bar to get to my pin. I'm going to go ahead and magic of television. So we are signed in. I'm unplugging the power. Battery is running low. I'm going to dismiss this panel. And right now we're at 6%. It looks like powering down happens somewhere in the neighborhood of 5%. I am going to go ahead and recover the web page because I want to make the processor run a little bit. Again, this should power down soon. I think it happens around 3% of the battery life. Never mind. Looks like 5. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 5%. So in 5 minutes, we have turned the laptop on and signed in twice and had the battery power turn off. Everything seems to be off again. So quick grab of the plug. Let's go ahead and set another lap. And I'm going to plug this back in. And I'm going to turn it on. Oops, no, I had to wait for it to power back down. Sorry. So in theory, it's powering back up. There's the HP display. And so again, in roughly now the same amount of time that it took for us to prime the MacBook Pro 16-inch once for battery power, to be able to go from dead to powered back on, we have managed to do that 3 times on this HP Probook. And, you know, it doesn't have, you know, the greatest of specs or anything like that. So it doesn't seem to be, we can at least say that it's right now a MacBook Pro specific issue, right? Because we have tested the MacBook Pro 16-inch and now we have tested an HP Probook with Windows installed, right? So far, evidence is pointing to this being sort of an Apple issue. And next is, okay, let's grab another Apple device, right? Because this is how we are trying to make this, I hesitate using the term empirical or scientific because I think those words have lost a lot of meaning over the years. But basically, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to hypothesize different scenarios and narrow down what's going on, right? And so this definitely seems to be an Apple product type of issue, specifically with the MacBook. And now we're going to test, instead of another MacBook Pro 16-inch from 2019, we're going to test a 2017 MacBook Pro 15-inch to see how close it is. Now, to run a third experiment, to take away one more question, we would actually need to have 2 MacBook Pro 16-inch from 2019, and I don't have one. So there is that. It is also important to note that when it comes to the MacBook Pro 16-inch, I still haven't done anything except for installing Logitech gaming software to be able to run the webcam, and OBS to be able to record from the webcam. Those are the only 2 things that I have done to modify the software that is on the MacBook Pro 16-inch 2019. So let's get back to killing the battery on the MacBook Pro 15-inch 2017. All right, so we have the MacBook Pro 16 or 15-inch 2017. I have the 16-inch doing the actual recording, so we know that it's working. We haven't changed any of the settings whatsoever. on the device from the default install that we did with the first run. I am going to be using the 16-inch through the hub power adapter that I have. It's a 90 watt, I believe. This is the power brick. I want to make this, basically as true as I possibly can. And then this is the 87 watt, which comes with the 15-inch. So there's actually, there's no size difference between these two, which I think is interesting from a consistency of experience perspective. With that said, the 97 watt or 96 watt is definitely heavier than the 87 watt. So I'm going to leave this right there. When we run our tests, I'm going to run it with the power adapter 2 to make sure to be able to demonstrate that it's not the power adapter that's causing the change. So I don't actually know what's going to happen. I only have history to base this off of, and in theory, I'm going to be able to do with the 15-inch the same thing that I did with the HP Probook. So let's go ahead and get started. They are being plugged into the same power strip each time. All right, so when we plug this in, oh wait, I have to demonstrate that it doesn't have power. Sorry. Let's go ahead and open up the top. We shouldn't get anything. It should just remain a black screen. Nope, it pops up with battery, so it's telling us we need to power in. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. We should hear the sound. I don't know if the noise cancellation is going to stop that, but basically, let's go ahead and plug it in. Okay, so we did not hear the sound, but immediately, I didn't have to touch a button, but plugging it in automatically brings up the login screen, and we're ready to go. So through the magic of television, I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Okay, so we're signed in. I'm going to go ahead and unplug. Set this over here. Actually, let's go ahead and put that down here. I'm going to disconnect the 87 watt, and I'm going to put it onto the left-hand side. Just to kind of start setting up for the next one. So this is the 87 watt. And we can see the notification of low battery is already being displayed, which is good stuff. And basically I'm going to be looking at fonts because I'm working on a project right now. And I'm sort of on the font trip right now. That didn't take long at all, so the battery has gone ahead and died. So let's go ahead and close the clam. And I'm going to lap this, go ahead, open it back up. This time I'm going to be using the 96 watt, there it is. 96 watt power adapter and the cable that comes with the 96 watt. So let's verify that the battery is dead. I just hit the power button and hopefully we'll see our friendly neighborhood. Your battery is dead. You need to plug me in, Jim. That's interesting. Come on, there it is. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and plug it in. I'm not going to touch the power button because we're going to see if it responds in the same way by actually booting up, and it does. So we're booting up again. Again, this is the 96 watt with the cable that comes with the 96 watt. Again, I'm going to go ahead and unplug it just to try a different variation. This will be the 96 watt with the cable that comes from the 87 watt adapter. Right, so this is the cable that comes with the came with the 96 watt in the box. This is going to be the 87 watt cable. Again, through the magic of television. We probably didn't get enough battery power to even get through the login screen, but I want to see that verification. because the screen is black right now, so there's not even the backlight. This is the part that always makes me nervous because I'm like, did I break something for real? Okay, I'm going to take it on faith. I was definitely pushing that power button. So this is the 87 watt cord with the 96 watt brick. Again, not touching anything. We finally hear the sound that it has power, and the Apple logo is there. So no battery, nothing. We're not waiting 5 minutes or whatever it was to get this going. Magic of television, we're signing back in. It's doing its recovery of my desktop. Okay, this was a little bit odd when I came back in. It was asking me to update my Apple ID settings. I'm pretty sure that's because of the MacBook Pro 16-inch. Odd as that may be, magic of television. And I've been getting this a lot with regard to, basically me signing into the computer to do some work and it asking me to update my Apple ID settings. And I'm not totally sure what's going on with it because when I actually do update, this signifier doesn't go away. It just keeps telling me that I need to update. So I usually do it like 2 or 3 times just to make sure that it's done and out of the way. Okay, so in theory we have that done. I want to make sure that I've got this set on more space. So quit that. Affinity Designer is asking me if I want to restore some stuff for another project. I think we're good to go there. But yeah, so basically you can see, let me go ahead and stop the stopwatch. This is what happens with, did we do it 3 times? I think we did. Once with the 87 watt, once with the 96 watt, once with the 96 watt with the 87 watt cable. So you can see that this is sort of the expectation that has been built up over time. Again, I've been using these things for a decade, and this has been the way that they've always worked. And so if that has fundamentally changed because of a physical architecture difference between the 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro and the 2019 16-inch, it would be nice to know that up front, like, hey, this is something you should be expecting as a difference. Just so you know, 10.15.3, so same version of software, 2.8 gigahertz chipset, 16 gigabytes of RAM. I am showing a Radeon Pro with 4 gigabytes of RAM on the graphics card, as well as an Intel HD graphics onboard or on-chip graphics as well. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and shut the clam for this. We're going to do one more pass with the 16-inch, so I'm going to go ahead and let the battery die on it and switch back out and use the 15-inch to do recording, and then we'll switch back up to the face camera. So see you on the other side, right? All right, so we're back. We've got the 16-inch 2019 MacBook Pro here, 87 watt charging brick and cable on my left, the 96 watt charging cable and brick on my right. The 15-inch is set back up the same way that the 16-inch was set up while it was recording. So we have OBS running and we have it plugged into the hub with a 90 watt, I believe, power supply. It's important to reiterate that this 16-inch MacBook Pro, when we did the initial run, had no new software, nothing. You saw me set it up and everything like that, and we were able to duplicate that powering on problem. Now it only has OBS and the Logitech gaming software installed, and they're not running because basically on the 15-inch, the way I was able to get the battery to drain so quickly, part of that's just because I have 50,000 things open. And so that was pretty easy. Now what I want to do for this time is I actually want to start with the 15-inch MacBook Pro stuff and see how long it takes and then switch over to the 16-inch. So we're going to be running the same 3 sort of experiments, only this time we have set everything up. We don't have to wait for the installation of software. It can literally just be a power check, right? So let's go ahead and start our stopwatch, grab the 87 watt and the cable. All right, so that's plugged in. I'm gonna put the cable out of the way here. Let's go ahead and crack this open, see what sort of feedback we get. So the backlight did come on and then it shut off immediately. I didn't see any kind of there it is, battery power indicator saying that I needed to plug in. So let's go ahead and plug in. This time I am not going to hit the power button because at least for 5 minutes, because as we saw with the 15-inch, I didn't have to do anything. It just turned on once it got power. Now I did hear the sound that says that it is getting power, and we do get the battery indicator saying that it is charging. So let's see how long this takes. Oh, and roughly what we're waiting for is about the 5-minute mark for this to actually go ahead and start up without me touching anything. Okay, so we're at the 4-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about some things just to see what happens. So right now the screen is as black as it can be, which means that nothing is getting power, right? With that said, one of the reasons that I'm also doing this second test with the MacBook Pro 16-inch is because when I first got it from the laptop or from the from the Apple Store, it could be that the battery was just drained so far that it needed to have that pre-charge, right? It needed to have, like, there was something there saying we had to do it. Whereas this time what I ended up doing is we had it recording. It was plugged into power, so it was obviously charging the battery. And then basically I played a movie through the browser to basically run the battery down. It did. The laptop shut down. And it was less than, I would say, a minute or two that I set it back up to be able to do this experiment. So we're at the 5-minute mark. We started at about 40 seconds in, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of give it another minute. But as you can see, the screen has not changed. No other visual indicators. The backlight for the keyboard has not turned on. And there is no visual indicator that anything is happening. We are also using the 87 watt power brick as opposed to the 96 watt. Not sure if that actually makes a difference, but we're trying to work off the principle of charity and really give this thing the opportunity to do what it needs to do. And at 6 minutes, I'm probably going to go ahead and hit the power button. Okay, so we're at 6 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually not going to hit the power button. I'm going to hit some of the other keys before I hit the power button just to see how the laptop reacts. In fact, let's see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and click the trackpad. A few seconds to do its thing. Okay, so hitting any button does seem to turn it on. It says that it's at 4% power. Let's go ahead and hit the lap there. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it so that we can start draining the battery. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in because that does consume a decent amount of power. So through the magic of television. Okay, so we're powered back in. We're watching War Games yet again. And right now, Safari should be using the most energy. And at any moment, it should power down. It's going to take longer than it took on the 15-inch because, again, with the 15-inch, I had so much going on. I think that the application that was drawing the most power at that time was actually Affinity Designer, which is the vector graphics tool that I use. So let's see how long it takes for battery power to run out. I'm going to go ahead and start putting up like a JavaScript data visualization just to try to speed this up a bit for myself. So let's drag it to the bottom, snapped into place, drag it up size-wise, and there we go. So we're still at 1%, and I do grant them like I grant Apple a lot of kudos for having the batteries last this long and their power efficiency, right? This is just one experience overall. And again, we're talking about expectations and how they're tied into experience design. So there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and switch out the cable. So I'm going to be using the cable from the 96 watt brick as opposed to the 87 watt brick. And we'll see what happens. So I did hear the I'm charging sound again. We are plugged in. I'm going to go ahead and let this one run. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and push the power button or some other button to try to bring this up. Okay, we did get a screen flicker. I don't know if the camera caught that. And then it says, I'm charging, right? I can't power on, I'm charging. So we'll see how long it takes. And hopefully it'll just power back on the way that the 15-inch did before. All right, so we've hit the 4-minute mark on this lap. Nothing has happened on the screen. It's not backlit, so I'm going to do the talking thing again. And I want to caveat this with the idea is not, I'm not an old school lithium battery user, right? Like when I used to sell electronics back in the day, like, 2000s, early 2000s, we used to tell people, let the battery drain and, then charge it. That's not what I'm doing here. What's happening here is, sometimes this becomes a battery bank for me. So I'll be carrying my backpack or my messenger bag with me with the laptop in it, and my phone is about to die, and I'll plug the phone in. And so I'm constantly like draining off of this thing, or for some other reason, basically the battery gets drained. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, the expectation that has been set because of the 2017 15-inch is that when I plug it in, I can turn it on immediately. Now, that's not just the 2017. That's also when I had one that I purchased in 2013 or got on a lease in 2013. And that was also back in like 2009 when I got my first laptop, my first MacBook Pro. Because sometimes I'm doing stuff and I'm not plugged in, but I'm in sort of a zone. And so when the battery warning comes up, I'm like, whatever, I'll deal with that later. Because of course now, that was one of the things that I think was introduced with the MacBook Pro 2009 MacBook Pro is, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the space bar, see if that causes some sort of reaction. It doesn't. Oh, there we go. So it looks like we're at 6%. And it does look like I can use Touch ID to go ahead and power in. So let's go ahead and do Touch ID. Nope. Okay. So Magic of Television. And we're going to unplug it. So that was the 87 watt brick with the 96 watt cable. And so I'm going to be switching these out while I talk. But there's also pass-through power, at least in theory. So we're going to be using the 96 watt cable and the 96 watt brick. So now we have the 96 watt cable and the 96 watt brick. So I'm just going to let this drain by doing all the graphics ever. So it looks like we're already at 4%. When we signed in, it was at 6. Oh, want to do a lap. So with that run, it still took us roughly 4 or 5 minutes before we could actually get the device turned on. And it was something that we had to enact ourselves. And what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to try opening and closing the clam to see if the clam will cause it to actually start up automatically. Because again, with the 2015 inch, blah, blah, the 2017 15-inch, you saw that basically I could just open it and the battery icon came up and said, you need to charge me, man. I ain't got the power for this. And as soon as it was plugged in, all of a sudden the Apple logo popped up and we started up immediately. Then I let it drain, changed out the cables and everything, and the same thing happened. It just came up with the Apple logo. But every time we've done it here, since learning that is part of that 2017 experience, I've had to interact with some component on here, but not the power button. Notice that I did not actually have to turn it on. I just had to hit one of the buttons. So there is that. So we're at 3%, 2%. We are at 1%, so it's going to shut down any second. And I should say, again, operating on the principle of charity, it could be that there's something about the way Mac OS right now with Catalina is operating. I mean, well, I guess that's not entirely the case because the 2017 15-inch is running the same version of Mac OS. But what I was going to say, we'll throw it out there anyway, is that maybe Mac OS is letting the battery drain farther on the 16-inch than it did on the 15-inch for whatever reason. And historically speaking, Apple has made decisions with regard to power and battery with regard to different devices operating a little bit differently. So there is that to consider as well. Okay, so that powered down, so right at about the 5-minute mark. So now we have the 96 or the 97 watt, no, 96 watt and the brick and cable. And what we're going to do is try to see what the interaction is with the clam itself. Let's go ahead and do a lap here. So basically what I'm just going to do is I'm going to open up the clam and see what we get. If anything, again, using the 2017 15-inch as the baseline experience that sets the expectation for the user, I would expect to see, I need to be charged coming up on the screen or on the display right now. And right now on the 2016 or the 2019 16-inch, it doesn't look like that's the case. So whatever the clam interactivity is, it does not do any indication to the software to say, hey, I want to be powered up. Let's go ahead and hit the power button as well. And, trackpad and escape key, spacebar, whatever. The screen did flicker, but I did not get the battery. There it is. So we've got the battery indicator saying I need to be plugged in. So this time, though, I'm going to go ahead and close the clam. And I'm going to plug it in. We did get the sound, that audible sound, in case you didn't hear it. And so basically that says to me, hey, I'm getting power. Now, the first time when I brought it in, that sound did not happen. And again, principle of charity, it could just be that the battery was further drained than it normally would be. I'm going to give this basically a minute, and then I'm going to open up the clam and see what happens. Okay, so it's been a minute. Go ahead and open up the clam. Now it's plugged in. We have power. I don't see a screen flicker. It does look like there's a little bit of a light, and we get the I'm charging, give me a moment indicator. So I'm going to let this, I'm going to try hitting keys every minute just to see at what point we actually get the opportunity to power on just because this is using the 96 watt brick and the cable. So the power supply that comes with the laptop itself is the one that is actually here on this experiment. So there's 2 minutes, trackpad, spacebar, escape key, power button. I did see a screen flicker. Okay, so that time it actually did power on. We're at 1%. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. And we're going to do this again just to kind of see what we get. And I'm only standing here as still as I possibly can because that's going to happen. Okay, so let's go ahead and mark that lap. Again, I'm going to close the clam because, again, we're talking about user expectations. the sound was made. I'm going to go ahead and open up the laptop. This time I'm not even going to wait. I'm just going to hit the trackpad, the space bar, the escape key, and the power button. Not that you actually have to hit all of those, but one of those should cause this thing to move, right? In some way, shape, or form. And that doesn't seem to be happening. There we go. It's just taking a very long time compared to the 2017 inch or 2017 15 inch. So we have, again, I need to charge, hold your horses, vibe going on. I'm going to do this again. Let's do it at every 20 seconds. So basically, I'm going to do it when this hits 1 minute to see what we get there. And again, the expectation is still set that this is instantaneously through the pass-through charging should be able to power itself on. So I still get the battery indicator. We're almost at 20 seconds again. Oh, wait, there we go. So now we're logged in. Again, it's not as clean as the 2017 15 inch, which I would expect it to be not only as clean, but cleaner, right? Because again, we're talking user expectation here. I've bought a new thing. I'm gonna go ahead and stop that. So I've bought this new thing that has improved hardware over my previous generation. It should be smoother, it should be cleaner in some regard, especially when we consider that I've actually upgraded this one more than I've upgraded that one. That one does have a higher end graphics card, but it's still running like 16 gigs of RAM, only 250 gigabytes on the hard drive. You know, this is 1 terabyte, 32 gigs of RAM, and the higher end video card. So anyway, with that said, it's better than what it was the first time I brought it in. So that's good. You know, I only have to wait, a minute or two for it to actually be ready to boot up. But again, from setting expectations and experience, the 2017 inch, why do I keep saying that? 2017 15 inch is still a better experience, at least in my opinion. All right, so there you have it. Basically, the 16 inch did not seem to be fixed in the manner that I would expect it to be based off past experience. So we went ahead and we looked at my work laptop and how does that function with regard to a dead battery being powered or being direct connected to an outlet and trying to turn it on. We ran a few different experiments to kind of give it make sure it wasn't a fluke and make sure that it would work the way that it was expected to. Then we took a look again at the 2017 15 inch to see how it would react, and it reacted just like my work laptop, which is what I'm used to, having owned 3 devices up to the 16 inch, up to and not including the 16 inch, and having them all work that way. And then of course the 16 inch doesn't work that way, which is why I'm kind of like, is this a problem? And then we took another look at the 16 inch itself just to make sure, like, okay, so we looked at a Windows machine that's very, underpowered in my consideration. How does it react? We looked at the 2017 15 inch, which had a whole bunch of crap running and using a lot more processing power and a lot more stuff installed. And then we looked at the 16 inch. So we've got similar manufacturers over, anyway, basically just a lot of ways to take a look at it to say, this 16 inch is odd. And it could just be mine, right? So if you have a 16 inch and you run those experiments and you get something different, let me know. If you get something similar, let me know. Because I would like to know, is it just me? Is there something going on with me that maybe I don't know about? Or is this a bigger problem that is sort of across the product distribution line? So, with that said, I hope that gives some clarification into setting user expectation and trying to be realistic in setting those user expectations. And when you change what a user is supposed to expect, if you mean to, go ahead and explain it or give them something to go on, right? So like I remember, we'll use Apple because again, I'm most familiar with it, but also we're talking about Apple products. I remember when virtual desktops used to be able to be laid out into a grid of rows and columns. And basically, I remember at some point, I can't remember which Mac OS release it was, but it was basically, you know, Craig Federighi up there talking about mission control. And there was sort of this aside mention of, hey, you know, the you can't lay them out in grids anymore. Our solution doesn't allow for that, but it allows you to do all these other things that kind of get you close enough, right? And I also remember, so that was giving fair warning to a change that you knew you were introducing. And then I remember with the iPhone 4, because it was the first phone that had the antennae on the outside, and we had the antenna gate thing. Basically, if you created a junction with your finger on two of the antennae, basically you could end up dropping calls and all sorts of stuff. And what Apple did there is they came out after researching and looking at it, going, okay, yes, this is a problem. We realize it now. Thank you very much. We're going to give everybody a bumper case because I think it was the first time Apple got into like cases. And they said, you know, everybody who got the iPhone 4 in the last like 6 months or whatever it was, can go ahead and pick up a case, right? So that's sort of figuring it out after the fact, not wanting to do a recall or maybe not needing to do a recall of the entire product line and everything that you've sold so far, and basically giving people a solution there. I think the Samsung Fold also experienced something similar where basically it was like, you know, just switch it out, give us something else. The screen isn't right yet. And so when it comes to the 16-inch, I wasn't given any kind of warning. So that gives me pause to say that, or gives me reason to believe that this is an unplanned change, right? It's something that we're prepared for because we have the icons and everything like that, but it's not something that is necessarily planned to be a different experience. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to send this link out to Apple just to kind of give them a better understanding, because I may not be fully communicating what the problem is when it comes to my laptop. With regard to text and in person and showing people like this is the issue. And I think this video does a good job of saying like, this is the issue. So with that said, as always, thank you so much for making the time. I definitely do appreciate it. And I'll see